would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome to it, folks. We're almost there, creeping up on the end of the week. I hope you all have got excellent momentum going to take you through to the finish line. We're going to do something we've started as sort of a habit around here. We are going to check out the new construction that's coming online in the greater area I serve. So, and we're not doing that because I'm suggesting you come out and buy one of these houses. I'm doing it because we're trying to figure out where the building is happening, right? And we try to estimate where building's going to go. We do a lot of different things. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know we try to figure out where things are going to go. But then, of course, the final step in that is looking at what's actually coming out the other end. And that's where we do this. As always, the absolute best way to reach me is through the website at therebelbroker.com. Feel free to click the contact link in the menu bar to send along any ideas, suggestions, or observations that you might have. And of course, while you're there, please click the big red button at the top of the page titled Take the Survey to Support the Show. You'll be asked a few demographic style questions. You'll be asked to provide your email address. Please provide a valid email address so that when we do our monthly drawing for the $50 Amazon gift card to thank folks for going to the trouble of filling out the survey, you can be contacted and potentially win that. We are going to be doing one in the first couple of weeks of July. We do it at the beginning of each month. So you're just in time to get in on July's drawing. So again, if you head over to therebelbroker.com, go to the tippy top of the page, click the button that says take the survey to support the show. Do the stuff you're supposed to do once you click that, and you're all set. Good luck to those of you who are just now entering, and congratulations to the folks who've already won. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in. And also a note to folks who are members of the Rebel Underground. I'm going to start, and by start, I mean I'm going to create a to-do item for me for each month, the first weekend of each month, to send out a newsletter style thing, kind of just an update on what's going on and potentially new content. As for those of you who are members of the Rebel Underground, you know that I don't bother you. I send you stuff when I have stuff to send you. And so far, there's been one thing for those of you who've been on the Rebel Underground mailing list. So the point I'm making is I don't just spam you. I don't like spam. I don't like receiving spam. If I don't like receiving it, why in the world should I send it? So I'm not going to send stuff out that's just stuff for the sake of sending it out. I want it to actually have some value for you. I want you to get something out of it. I want it to contain valuable information for you. So far, we've released one video. There's another video in the works that's going to come out that's the follow-up to that one. The first one was designed to help you start countrywide. You've sort of identified a specific metro area or city, and then from there we take it from that assumption and help you drill down to smaller areas to focus your search for a suitable investment property. And the next step is going to be to explore in detail the analysis of a specific property. And that's going to be the next video that will end up being for the folks on the Rebel Underground. So a heads up for you is you can start seeing me checking in with you once a month with stuff that I think you will benefit from. So be looking for that for those of you who are members of the Rebel Underground. If you're not a member of the Rebel Underground and you'd like to be a member of the Rebel Underground, simply text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. That's text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. Follow the prompts that you receive after that. You'll get a confirmation so you know you're talking to who you think you're talking to. And follow the prompts, and you'll be all set. If you would rather join through the website, you can just go over to therebelbroker.com. In the show notes for just about every show, there's going to be a button that says Join the Rebel Underground. There you go. Click that, fill in the information that it asks for, and you're all set, and you are in. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in and look at this report. What's interesting about this is that it kind of confirms the things we've been talking about in terms of the volume of homes that are really out there in terms of their cost. However, the most recent one that I'm looking at here has some comforting elements to it. We'll get into them in a minute. When we start talking about these prices, you'll realize they're a little bit less comforting. Now, at the lowest cost here is a new development in Milpitas, California. Now, that tends to be at the extreme north end of Silicon Valley. It's the opposite side of San Jose from where I am, down in Morgan Hill. But it is another bedroom community for Silicon Valley. In fact, it's probably even a little more desirable than Morgan Hill, simply because of the commute distance. But it's a lot more of a urban setting, right? Morgan Hill is more going to be of a suburban where I live. I can see a lake. I'm surrounded by trees, and I'm still only 10 minutes away from shopping in the freeway. So there's that. $540,000 to $620,000 for 1 and 2 bedroom homes, between 910 and 1,103 square feet. So clearly, these are not single family residential homes. These are going to be townhomes or condos. And given what condos are going for, that is a little pricey for Milpitas. However, I would guess by the standards we've set, that is probably in the percentage range of being at the median price that we've talked about, that we'd like to see new construction being in. Now, next is in San Jose. This is a development that's going to have homes between 1,300 and 1,900 square feet, 2 and 3 bedroom. I think I mentioned the name of it is Indigo. It is the townhome condo style, but there will be at least 2 and 3 bedroom units. And the 3 bedrooms are really what I think are key here. If you're trying to provide housing that's designed more for folks who are taking that next step, potentially buying a home because they're going to be thinking about starting a family, that type of thing, you really need to be in that area closer to the 3 bedroom solution. And from what we've heard from folks in the giant segment of potential buyers out there, the millennials, they're looking at buying homes that aren't, quote unquote, the beginning home, and then they'll move into a new home later. These are folks who are looking to skip that second purchase. They're looking to skip the entry level home and simply go into the home that will satisfy what they perceive as their longer term goals in terms of having a child or anything like that. In my own personal experience with this particular buying segment, they do tend to want the 3 bedroom house. That's when they do go out and shop, that tends to be what they're looking for. And again, this price point in San Jose, not horrible. Next, we have Solera Ranch right here in Morgan Hill, with price ranging from $665,000 to $865,500. These are 2 and 3 bedrooms as well, 1,500 to 2,500 square foot units. Solera Ranch is another development that looks primarily like we're dealing with condo townhome style living, which isn't a problem, right? I mean, it sort of goes along with the multifamily aesthetic. They're arranged a lot like, for someone on the East Coast, you'd think of them as sort of the brownstone style thing, the townhome thing, but you're usually sharing, excuse me, at least one wall in these cases. So there's that, which is still fine, but this is right around average price for this community. So that's good. So that's a grand total of 6, 10, 13 homes sort of in the works that fit that bill. Now, next is Heartland West California Collection, Meritage homes. And let's see, these are 682,000 to 726,000, 1,800 square feet to 2,300 square feet. Now, remember, Gilroy is south of me. And these are the first developments on my list that are absolutely single-family residential homes. They'll end up being in an HOA, but they don't share any walls with anyone. You've got your own little yard. And in terms of average price, they're a little bit on the high side of Gilroy. but it's a good sign, right? We're seeing signs of developments happening where prices are more reasonable. Remember, the last time we had this discussion, there was almost nothing new that wasn't under $1 million. Remember, we had everything about $1 million, and we even had stuff where the cheapest stuff was 1.5 million. So this is a good change. This is a shift, and that's good news, I think, for folks who are out there looking for something that they can afford. Now, from here, I'm not going to go through the entire list, but from here on out, pretty much all the properties that are giving you a 3-bedroom option are giving them to you at right around $1 million. The next is Station 121 in San Jose. They've got, and the good news is there are still options for you. These are all 3 and 4 bedroom options. The Station 121 development is $697,000 to $913,000, so just shy of $1 million. But those higher end ones are going to be 4 bedrooms because these are all 3 and 4 bedroom developments. So you're going to be able to get into in San Jose a 3-bedroom home for about $697,000, which is really good. The average price in San Jose for a 3-bedroom home is above that, so that's a comfort. I like the idea that we're seeing more of this happening. In terms of the style, this is also going to be something that falls under the category of being townhome / condo style development. So as long as you're comfortable with that kind of stuff, and remember, this fits in with everything we've talked about in terms of the type of construction that we have anticipated, right? And I guess I mentioned that because the things we were discussing, the things that we were telling you to be prepared for 6 months ago and beyond, we're seeing it, right? We talked about, well, with what's going on with construction, with multifamily, you're going to see a lot more condo style development, a lot more townhome style development, and a lot more apartment style buildings going in. And that's what we're seeing. So that's what's coming online. But it is good. This is what I think people would normally expect to pay for a single family residential home. But at least there's something in there for folks to find something to get them where they want to be. As we move down this list, and there's some good numbers here. Station 121 has 21 units coming available. Heartland West California Collection in Gilroy has 6. And remember, these will come in phases, right? So, and at the Onyx, which is a Pulte Homes development in San Jose, same sort of thing, but their $700,000 home is a 2-bedroom home, and then they have some $918,000 homes that are going to give you 3 bedrooms. But there's 17 homes coming online there. So, and from there, the prices are in terms of what you're getting are relatively low. If we were to just search on what was giving you at least a 3-bedroom home from that point on, things aren't looking so great. However, there are plenty of developments that are at least closer than what we saw before statistically, that are hovering below $1 million, whereas everything was way up there the last time that we did a search on these particular numbers. So that's good, right? And I think it also calibrates you if you're in the Bay Area. And this is new home construction used to be that new home construction was 6 to 8% above existing homes, and now they are in many areas as much as 25% above the price of existing homes. And that's a dynamic that I think is also out of whack in terms of what represents a healthy marketplace. But as long as we have these super low inventories, I think that kind of thing is going to continue to happen as people simply don't have a choice. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the reality on the ground, right? We've looked at homes that are available, that are brand new construction. We've seen some encouraging things relating to price, but we also, if you continue down that list that we were just talking about, while we have been able to mention probably 30, 40 different new home construction areas where you can go get yourself a home where it's not ridiculously above the average price, there's a whole nother page of dozens of developments where there's probably 2 to 3 times as many homes available that are priced way up there, way above the $1.1 million mark. So still very lopsided. I've talked about a few communities where you might be able to get in there and get a good price, or I guess a relatively good price for a new home. But the truth is we're still way up hovering in terms of development. The vast majority of homes that are being built are at that way above $1.1, $1.2 million mark. Now, next, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with paychecks, debt, and where Americans are in terms of how they're managing things. And one other element, and I think these two things together are really more pieces into the puzzle of understanding how absolutely in parallel we have developed the current system into being exactly what we had last time. There has been one element missing from what we saw last time that was more of a psychological thing. And I've always celebrated the fact that we didn't have it, that it wasn't there. Well, it's back. It's creepy. And we're going to talk about it in a minute. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909.
Welcome back, everyone. So what was it? What was what was one of the final elements that was a part of the downturn last time that I have been celebrating has not been part of the environment we've been creating for purchasing homes? Now, I mentioned a minute ago, it was a psychological thing. It was very much about where the minds of buyers were. And over the course of the last year, as the market has gotten nuts and super low supply and demand at least staying the same or increasing a little bit in most cases, and with migration we've talked about, right? We talked about buying migration, where people left areas like San Francisco to go buy in other areas that were less expensive. The psychology in that I thought was so great, and one of the few things that you could point to and say, well, at least there's some rationale here. At least there's some folks thinking critically and thinking, you know what, I'd rather just not play that game and go buy somewhere else. And that was whenever it gets like that, like it was last time, I frequently referred to that as the feeding frenzy. When that blood gets into the water and people start going nuts, that's bad, right? And just before things went horribly bad last time, probably for about a year before, we were seeing that. We were seeing people buying in ways that were just amazing. Now, we've seen little hints of it over the last year in terms of people coming in with offers just way above asking price to ridiculous levels that they fully anticipated would not be supported by an appraisal. And in fact, I've had some properties that I've sold in the past where I knew they would not appraise. Now, I had different reasons why I knew they wouldn't appraise, simply because there weren't enough properties available on the marketplace that were comparable. But I know what it's like to be in that position. But in these cases, it's not because there's a lack of comparables. It's because there are comparables. There's enough to make an estimate on, but they are at a point where they're done. They're tired of shopping, and they're willing to throw more money at it and understand that it doesn't mean that they're going to borrow more. It means they have to cough up more cash. They have to come up with more cash to make the deal work, because the bank's not going to lend you more when you borrow way over what gets appraised, right? The value that the bank sets on in terms of what they're going to lend you is 80% of appraised value if you get a conventional loan. So that means buyers back then were just coughing up cash left and right, who could, right? Other folks were just out of luck. But folks were doing that to be that number one offer, to be the offer that got accepted. All right. And has that happened over the last couple of years? Sure. But it's been spotty. It's been here and there. Well, now we're seeing it as a trend. This is an article from Housing Wire. Falling inventory forces homebuyers to move at fastest pace ever. More buyers are making offers before even seeing the home. Now, I have not had one of my buyers do this. I had one of my buyers suggest we do this. And unfortunately, at the time, with the way things were going, this was probably March, I think, when we talked about doing this. It was primarily because when we went and looked at it, it was a packed house. The home had listed on a Thursday. We went and we looked at a Friday, and the listing agent was telling us no one's going to accept any offers until Tuesday, and then we'll review them. And then lo and behold, discover while we're there that they had accepted, or not accepted, but allowed someone to submit an offer already. So I was looking at it, and my folks were like, well, then we'll just submit an offer. And then we'll just make a contingent on, and we'll have our inspection contingencies so we can, if we don't like it, we can back out of the deal. But even that is sort of a mild take on that, right? That was a circumstance thing. I suppose this is also a circumstance thing. However, we're seeing it happen more and more. And again, it's not happening as much in my markets here in Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, but it is happening in the markets up north. Now, housing inventory fell 8.9% from last year in the second quarter of 2017. And as we've been reporting for months, this number has been continuously dropping. Inventory has been dropping. The number of closed transactions has been dropping, but the price has continued to go through the roof because that's a classic low inventory scenario, right? Those are all the numbers you expect when inventory is ridiculously low. Apparently, the heat in this particular situation has gotten cranked up enough that the feeding frenzy mentality has begun. Housing inventory dropped for 9 consecutive quarters. It's currently down a full 20% from inventory levels 5 years ago. Home buyers are snatching up homes at the fastest pace since Trulia began tracking it in 2012. There's some just amazing numbers in here. 57% of homes were still on the market after 2 months in 2012. Today, that number shrank down to 47%. Now, remember, that's the entire country. So when you start focusing on these more intense marketplaces, you discover, you know what? There are some markets where homes aren't on the market after 2 weeks, much less 2 months. Now, in my marketplaces of Gilroy and Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I'm absolutely seeing some scenarios where homes are staying on the market a little bit longer. As I do on a weekly basis, I'm noticing that's not happening as much anymore. Things have definitely reheated up at the beginning of the year. Things were tending to stay on the market a little bit longer. But up in the San Jose area where things are a little bit more heated, that's absolutely a shrunken number. Things are tending to go relatively quickly. 33% of Americans who bought a home in the last year made an offer without even seeing the home in person. And that's according to a survey from Redfin. This is up from 19% of buyers who placed an offer on a home without seeing it first last year. Among millennials, even more placed offers without seeing the home in person, a full 41%. And remember, millennials make up the largest percentage of buyers in the market right now. Survey showed affordable housing was the most prevalent economic concern. Only 5% of home buyers say they would cancel their home buying plans if rates surpass 5%. And we've talked about that. We've tried to figure out here what's the magic number where folks start backing away in terms of interest rates. And we theorized that it's about 5%. This study would tend to back that up. So none of these movements, and I realize I've said this before, for those of you who've been listening for a while, this is something you've heard before. All of these little moves between 3.8 and 4.5 mean nothing. I have yet to encounter anyone who has said they're going to change their buying plan because of any of those moves that have happened. And despite the fact headlines want to poke everyone with a stick when the interest rates go up, they better move now before they go up higher, or when they go down and they poke you with a stick and say, wow, you better do it now while it's this low. And I get the goal of those headlines. I get that the goal is to spur more action in the marketplace counterproductively, right? Because the real spurring needs to happen with builders, not with borrowers. It's a scenario where that's where we need to be thinking. I think 5% is a reasonable place to say, you know what, that's where we see a shift in buying habits once that number hits 5%. And calibrate yourself to what interest rates have been historically. There are many of you out there who don't remember a time when interest rates were higher than 6%. When I first got into this business, interest rates were 13%. 11%, 12%, right in that neighborhood. I remember when interest rates went below 10%, when they hit 9 point something, a huge number of people came out to buy. That was a big psychological number. As soon as things went below 10%, everyone was like, wow, these rates are amazing. And remember, these are folks who at the point where they were buying could remember what the interest rates were in the 70s, which 17, 18%, right? When things were nuts. So it's all about calibrating yourself to understanding the context of the numbers at the time. All right. So according to them, as supply continues to dwindle, a new report from the National Association of Realtors showed pending home sales dropped for the third consecutive month. And of course they did. We talked about that here. Possibly a sign that low housing supply is beginning to curb demand. No, it's not. Housing supply is not beginning to curb demand. Demand is about where it was, right? I think I can argue reasonably from my practical experience, at least here in Morgan Hill, that the number of folks actively searching in Morgan Hill for a home is down a little bit. Not enough, though, to offset the low supply, right? The demand still is just way outpaces the supply. The reason why pending home sales have dropped for the third consecutive months is because you cannot get into a contract on homes you don't have for sale. It just makes logical sense. You're going to see lower pending sales numbers when there are fewer homes to buy. And they just reported in the previous paragraph that there are fewer homes on the market. So, of course, there's going to be fewer pending sales because there just aren't enough of them, right? So it has nothing to do with curbing demand. If it was curbing demand, then we'd see prices going down, at least in some way, in more markets, right? We're seeing it in some markets, just not in all. And that was another thing I was enthusiastic about. I thought that perhaps this logic, this lack of interest in buying sight unseen, this lack of interest in paying way above asking price was going to help to plateau the prices and maybe even drag them down a little bit. And if this trend continues, it could overwhelm that. If we see this feeding frenzy kick in, what does that mean for the plateau in prices? Do they still stay plateaued, or do folks just give up and say, well, I was expecting things to soften and they didn't. We got to buy something. It'd be interesting to see if that happens in the next quarter. Pending home sales showed a decrease in the past few months. Existing home sales continue to increase as a percentage of overall sales. Pending home sales report showed the inventory shortages are hitting hardest in the entry-level housing market, which saw decreased home sales of 7.2% from last year, while homes priced at over $1 million saw sales increase by 29.1% from last year. And let's be clear on why those homes saw an increase. It is for the exact reason we just talked about. It's one reason why I wanted to cover what new construction's actually putting out there for people to buy in the earlier segment, because that's what you can buy. The reason why it's up, the reason why million-plus homes are up in terms of what's being bought is because that's the majority of what's being built. It's just a question of folks not having a choice and having to buy at that point. Now, of course, there's also getting pre-approved for that stuff, having the credit rating for all that stuff. But remember, again, if you've been a listener to the show for a while, you know that all of those things have been jerked around enough that more folks are able to buy at that higher price point than should be able to buy at that higher price point because of the manipulations relating to credit ratings. Let's see. According to Realtor.com senior economist Joseph Kirchner, today's numbers are yet another indication that the lack of homes for sale is having a major negative impact on the market. The future direction will be brighter if and when we see a significant uptick in inventory, but that unfortunately doesn't seem to be right around the corner. Couldn't be more true. And unfortunately, for those folks who need to buy, who have been waiting and hoping maybe for something to happen that works in their favor, it isn't looking like that's going to happen this season. The article goes on to finish by saying the persistent and disproportional drop in starter and trade-up home inventory is pushing affordability further out of reach of home buyers, Trulia pointed out in its report. Starter and trade-up home buyers need to spend 3.1% and 1.7% more of their income than this time last year, whereas premium home buyers only need to shell out an additional 0.9% more for their income. So yeah, it's one of those situations where Folks are buying what they can buy, what's available for them to buy. And here's the other part. There's one reason I think that a lot of folks are drawn to the new construction. The new construction is easier. You simply go in and you say, I'm buying it. There is no multiple offers, right? You go in, you say, I'll go ahead and buy it. They mark that one as sold, and you're done. You fill out the paperwork. They hold it for you for X amount of days till you take the next step, and then you just move forward with it. I've considered buying new construction, despite the fact there's a premium on buying new construction. I haven't considered it for very long, particularly when I look at other options, but that's the truth out there, right? So I don't think there's any misunderstanding on why more expensive homes are selling. It is simply a case where if you want to buy a home and you want to get it done, in a lot of cases, those are what's available in a lot of areas. Next on our hit list today, and this one's scary. It comes to us from CNN Money, and it fits directly into concerns relating to the debt portfolio, right? We've talked about debt here. We've talked about concerns relating to where the debt portfolio of the average person is, how much debt are people taking on, and how much of it threatens their ability to meet their obligations, right? Because that's absolutely, without referring to specific things, that's what happened last time and resulted in a lot of bad stuff, right? So, looking at this, there is some kind of staggering data here. Nearly half of Americans say their expenses are equal to or greater than their income. And that's a new study from the Center for Financial Services Innovation. And for those 18 to 25, the percentage is over half. So 18-year-olds to 25-year-olds. This year, my oldest son becomes a part of that group. The percentage is over half, 54%. That means half of the people in the United States have no kind of financial cushion. They are either living paycheck to paycheck or paycheck to paycheck with an increase in their debt each month. Imagine that. You're getting paid, you're buying what you're needing to buy, and in addition to that, you're having to buy things on your credit card where the balance just continues to go up. This is a creepy thing. Of the 25% who say they have too much debt, 96% report being stressed. Let's see. With 1 out of every 2 people maxed out with expenses, it is likely you or someone you know, coworkers, receptionists, the guy mowing your lawn, or the woman who takes care of your kids. Okay, so that's all from the article. That's what they kind of cover. But how does that fit into the jigsaw puzzle we've put together in terms of understanding the overall debt that's floating around out there? Well, it stresses it, right? We start to have to look back to the show where we talked about what are the first things people stop paying. If you're someone who is living like this, one of these 50%ers who are living paycheck to paycheck and your debt is growing each month, at some point you stop paying something. Just feels like we're priming a pump, doesn't it? And sadly, it should feel familiar. Because what were the symptoms last time? Well, the symptoms last time were overbuying on houses and finding that eventually ends could not be met financially. Maybe we're not achieving it in exactly the same way. Or maybe there's a variety of different things playing into this indebtedness for each individual person. But the net result is the same. You're a stressed borrower who needs to figure out, what do you cut first? And sadly, that's where we need to come in and realize this is going to have a profound effect at some point. You can't keep going like this without something crumbling. And there's all kinds of stuff that are in there. Even just the things we've talked about this week, whether we want to talk about the next thing that pushes it over the edge, whether it's pensions or whether it's that 120% home loan you're going to get because you're bundling it with your student loan, or it's the excessive amount of securitized loans relating to cars that are now in default from 2015, right? We don't need to look at just one thing. Maybe last time we could look simply at the housing scenario and realize this was nuts. And up until about a year and a half ago, we could at least say, well, at least things seem a little bit sane. There were still some one-off, goofy, crazy things that were going on with subprime lending and other types of things. But we are now fully on board. That all of the things we've talked about over the last month and reviewed over the last month, now it's all of it. Now it's not just relating to housing. It's not just relating to poor decision makings relating to how we lend money. It's all kinds of other stuff. It's student loans. It's pensions. It's it's people living check to check, and all of these things together. I have a hard time being optimistic. Again, every time I say something like this, I call out for someone to give me the other side of the story. Where can I find the optimism in this? Share it with me, please. I would really love to hear it. But I think that being aware of this is a possibility and coming up with plans. Now, remember, one thing I like to do is try to say, well, what does that mean to me? Well, if you're an investor, I think that means you prepare yourself for a potential situation where a switch or a downgrade or a problem, I don't know what to call it, a catastrophe, an apocalypse. If that happens, what do? I think you prepare mentally for it. If you're a person who's doing renting, if you look at what happened with renting last time, I honestly don't think you're in a horrible position. I think worst case scenario is if things do negatively affect rents, because we've built out so many apartments and maybe people retreat from paying slightly higher amounts for single-family residentials to retreat back into apartments. I think those get filled up even with the ones we've built relatively quickly. So I don't see that as something where you potentially need to worry about reducing your rents by much. And of course, this will be across the country. You need to figure out what's true in your area. But I know in my area, if I had a rental home right here in Morgan Hill, I would be a little bit less worried about it. I'd want to recognize I may need to survive without increasing my rent for some period of time. I might even in my head want to build in a X amount of reduction in my rent, particularly if I currently had a renter that was awesome and paid on time and took good care of my property and did me a solid in terms of how they're being a tenant. Well, then maybe it's worth me cutting their rent per month by a certain amount to make it work for them so that they can stay in my property. If you're a flipper, maybe you need to accelerate how you flip. Nothing would stink more than to start the flipping process on a property, be committed, and be to that point of no return, and then have something bad happen. So maybe you need, if you're someone who's been on sort of a 3 to 6 month cycle in terms of how quickly you turn around your properties, maybe you need to come up with a strategy that works faster. Maybe you need to look at wholesaling instead of doing the flipping yourself if you're worried. We could talk about wholesaling at some time. I'm not sure we've ever even done a show on wholesaling where basically you find the deal and then give it to someone else. But if you've already sort of kicked it off and gotten the deal going and you're actually in escrow, I think you'd be in a position to find someone who'd be interested in wholesaling that from you as well. So anyway, I hope that has been valuable information for everyone. I'm determined within the next couple of shows to find some good news. Let's talk about something happy. But this is sort of the truth on the ground as I see it. So, and as always, I'm anxious to hear what you think. So feel free to reach out via the website at therebelbroker.com if you'd like to send along any ideas that you have relating to this stuff. Thanks again for listening, everybody. I'll talk to y'all next time.